Hello, everyone. Welcome to another round of Alicia Reviews Books, where I'm Alicia. I'm a licensed therapist and I love to read. I also am passionate about helping folks find quality, accessible resources, and we know that there's so many books out there around mental health topics that it can be confusing on where to start. So I'll read them for you, give you my thoughts, and then you can decide if it's going to be a good fit for you. Today, we are talking about the book Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith. This one came out in 2022, so a pretty new book depending on when you're watching this. And I always start with my overall rating, and then I always add qualifiers, and I still end with who would I recommend this to, and I would stay because this is a doozy, y'all. I do read some of these for book club, and so I sometimes will share some other thoughts just because I have one perspective, and then I want to share other thoughts as well. So, my overall rating for this book, using a 5-star method, just like Goodreads, is a 1 star. This is my harshest rating yet, guys. Like, I still want you to follow, like, even if you are just like, why would I even listen to this? Trust me, still listen to my thoughts. I've got some spicy thoughts, but also it's just like a good reminder of like how to evaluate things, and I'm still going to give some other resources. And I do have a folks who I think this would be helpful for. So like stay tuned. It's just if you're watching this, this is probably not, you're not the audience for this book. But you might be the audience for my people. I'm also aware that I might be a strict reviewer. And I get it. Like, I'm in a book club, and the person that I'm in the book club with, she loved the book and was talking about how, like, she was going to use it with her clients. And I love that for her, and I love that for her clients. It didn't do anything for me, and I think it wouldn't do anything for my clients. And sometimes I'm like, am I being too strict? And then I look at other reviews on Goodreads and like Amazon and stuff. And so one of the reviews on Goodreads like stuck with my soul, and I wanted to share it with you guys just so you know that I'm not being overly mean. Like, I'm not alone here. So, one of my favorite reviews on Goodreads of this book was, so remind you, the title is called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And the review was simply, somebody has told me this before. Yes. So this is why I think most of us, so let me back up. I'm going to share the overview. I'm going to start with what they think the overview is, and then I will share how it came across to someone who has read several self-help books and psychology books. So this is an experience. I'm going to summarize it. So, experienced clinical psychologist. This comes a powerful tool for making our daily lives easier and more positive. This book is your mental health toolbox filled to the brim with different tools for different challenges, whatever you're facing: stress, anxiety, depression, lack of confidence, self-criticism, or grief. You'll find ideas for processing how you're feeling, ways to get new perspective, and strategies to help you cope. These tools won't prevent life from throwing stuff at you, but they will help you navigate, swerve, pick yourself up, and get back on track. Short, bite-sized entries make it easy to find the advice, blah, 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 and just like kind of explaining what it is. When reading like another thing about this book, it talked about how a lot of times in therapy, we go in thinking that something that like we are wrong, like we must be flawed, there must be something inherently wrong with us. And then you go to therapy or you learn something and you're like, oh, it might not be all me. Like this might be a normal thing, or there might be a term to describe it. And it's just that lack of education that we don't always know those things. And so I thought that that's really what the book was supposed to be about. And it kind of even set that up in the introduction, which is honestly one of the things that I did like. So I'm going to start with the things that I liked about the book and then go into the things I didn't like. And I actually really did like the introduction because it was kind of saying, yeah, like this person is a clinical psychologist and they would see these things with their clients about how they were blaming themselves and being critical and feeling hopeless. And then sometimes just with like knowledge and education, they were able to start empowering them and kind of like changing the way that they viewed what was going on. I am all about that mentality. Like, that is my jam right there. It's a lot of what I do as well in those early stages of therapy is just educating people on, okay, like there might be a origin from your family, or this was modeled, or there's a term to describe this. Like, this isn't a you are bad or you are inherently flawed type thing. Like, we're not about that in my therapy room. So I really loved the idea of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be just like bite-sized nuggets of like therapist hacks, and I don't believe in gatekeeping. So we're like, yes, let's like share our secrets and then you can like use these things and dive into them deeper. Your girl had a lot of hope, okay? She also talks about one of her reasons for writing this book was because there is a lot of misinformation out there. So something that I've talked about before, while I love the idea of us talking about mental health on social media or different platforms or even the variety of books that there can be misinformation. Or we might be talking to generalize and not really talking about the nuance of things, and that can be harmful as well. So I was like really excited to be like, yes, we're gonna give like bite-size, accurate, quality information. That's why I do these books, right? Or why I do these book reviews is like to say, hey, this person was raving about this book. Maybe we don't want to read it. Or, oh my gosh, this is the one. So again, like starting up, I was hooked. The entire introduction, I was like, yes, I'm here for it. And then that's kind of where it lost me. There were like a few other things that I did like about the book. If you truly have like never gone, like know anything about mental health or things like that, I do like some of her explanations of why things happen. One of the things that I talk a lot about in my therapy sessions are how our brain is always trying to make sense of things. And so she was talking about how our brain, like we might have different symptoms, whether it's a headache or an upset stomach or different emotions that we are feeling or noticing. And our brain is searching for reasons for why we may be feeling or doing a certain thing. And it's trying to like make sense of it. That's how I describe a lot of my stuff too, is, our brain is just constantly trying to help us better understand, kind of like help navigate, if I'm feeling sad, these are things that I can do, or this might be why I'm sad. So I did like that. It was just a good foundation of our brain's not trying to be mean. It's actually like trying to be helpful. It's just doesn't always do it in the most helpful way. So I did really like her explanation of that and thought it was very validating and normalizing for a lot of folks. I also loved, and again, if you've watched any of my videos, I'm a big awareness person. And so a lot of her stuff was talking about depression, anxiety, attachment stuff, relationship stuff, grief. She covers a lot. And honestly, the foundation for a lot of these things is to build awareness. One of the things that I thought was really cool is sometimes in self-help books, that's it, just become aware. And it's like, okay, like what does that mean? I'm reading this book to know how to do these things. Help me out a little bit. And one of the tools that she did, and it's something that I think I've done and other therapists have done, but maybe not really had like a structured name for it, is using hindsight to build awareness. And that sounds kind of silly, right? Like, well, if I'm trying to build awareness in the present moment, like, why would I think back and like do reflection stuff? And sometimes it's really hard to do awareness in the moment, especially if it's a new skill. So I really liked that she was like normalizing and validating that it's going to take some time. So let's start by just thinking about what you were noticing yesterday and using that hindsight to build those muscles in our brain. I really like that. And she was also big on starting small and being realistic with our goals and like things that we're working on, not trying to do all the things or jump into the deep end. I'm a big fan of all those methods. So, like a lot of that language, I was a big fan of. And that's the end of what I liked about the book. Sorry. Um, Overall, I felt it was kind of blamey. Like, she's doing these little like nuggets of there's a chapter on depression, a chapter on anxiety, a chapter on grief, and all these things. And a lot of the language that she used was basically just blaming us for feeling those types of things. And like, well, you should just know better type stuff, or now that you know, like you can do better. And I don't think it's always that simple. Like a lot of people, I mean, myself included, but I have clients who are well educated. I work with other therapists and doctors and people who know about mental health and our physical health, yet we don't always do the best thing for ourselves. Like I'm a therapist and guess what? I still deal with depression and anxiety. I know to do the things like journaling and reaching out to friends, but that doesn't account for the barriers that can come into place. And sometimes, like the tricks that our brain plays, or sometimes I'm really exhausted, or I don't have time, or my schedules don't line up with my friends, or sometimes it's easier just to get lost in a book versus like do some deep reflection. So it just felt very blamey and basically saying, like, well, we are the reason that we have these bad moods or these like unhelpful moods. She also, I don't think, really talked about the nuance, and maybe, well, no, because 2022 was like still kind of a wild time. Um, she talks about avoidance and distraction and like instant relief type stuff. And I think a lot of therapists and psychologists don't like distractions or avoidance. And in theory, I get it. Like there's literally, research that shows the more that we avoid something, the bigger and scarier it can feel, and it kind of like makes avoidance more of a automatic response. So like from the research side of things, I get it, but it also doesn't talk about how helpful or even healthy distraction and avoidance can be. And something that I worked a lot with my teens is like there's not always a time and place to deal with our emotions. Like if I am in the middle of a session and I get triggered with something, is that the time to be like, stop talking, please? I need to think about and just like sit with my emotions for a minute and do some reflection on why I'm feeling this way. No, I'm gonna do whatever I can to like, okay, I notice it, put it in a box. I'm gonna come back to this later and get back to being present with my clients. Or if I'm working on a big project that I really want to get done and I'm starting to notice some like intense emotions coming up, I'm going to temporarily distract myself, avoid, do whatever I need to do, and then I can come back to it later. So I think that's where a lot of folks like, we do need to come back to the thing eventually. But sometimes I'm overwhelmed. Like sometimes it's a full day of like there's chaos in the world, chaos at work, chaos in my neighborhood, like all this stuff going on. We all have limits and a capacity where sometimes I'm gonna get lost in a fantasy book and avoid my problems for a little bit. Keywords I'm using a little bit. And so eventually I have to come back and be like, okay, what do I need? Is there some sort of thing that I need for my community? And like these avoidance and distraction things, they serve a function and they help us survive really tough moments. And so I would have liked to see more of a balanced approach rather than just shaming us for like, well, if you're avoiding things, like think of the cost, like you're ruining your health. And it's just like making me feel bad. Also, if I'm dealing with anxiety and depression or grief or other things going on, I don't need to feel more crappy about myself. Like, I'm already saying the most awful things someone can be saying to oneself in my own head. I don't need this book to be like, yeah, you're not doing enough. If you just did something differently, you would feel better. Great. Another thing to beat myself up over. Like, just not a fan. I also like one of the themes in the book was she was just kind of crapping on, and understandably so, like toxic positivity. I hate toxic positivity. Like, and she's basically saying, well, all these other like self-help books or all these other mental health messages are all about just get over it, do your best, good vibes only. She might have a point with some of those things. I also hate those things. But then a lot of her messaging is like, struggle to build strength and like having to reframe the crap that we go through. And I get that some people need that reframe and like that, oh yeah, like I'm stronger because of these things. But sometimes like things are just really awful and we don't need to justify those things. Like we don't need to find the silver lining. We don't need to be like, well, I'm stronger and more resilient because of these things. Like, no, some things can just suck. I know I'll get through it. I know I'll be okay. This thing can still suck. So I felt like it was just kind of like double meaning and just a way for her to try to lift her stuff up by kind of crapping on other things. Um, so it just wasn't my favorite there either. I also think, even though she did a good job of explaining how sometimes like our brain works, I think that was the only thing she kind of explained well. And I think sometimes she threw in like jargony words, which are just like therapy talk. And if the point of this book is like, hey, you're probably going to read this if you know nothing about therapy, mental health, how to kind of cope with things. So then she was saying things like mood and emotion as different things, which I believe that they can be different things. But if I was someone who's never read a self-help book before, never grew up talking about emotions, I wouldn't really understand the difference. And so then it was like the book was assuming that I knew nothing, but then also assuming that I knew what she was talking about. I saw this even in like her attachment stuff. Like I know of attachment stuff, but then she's saying these different terms and different dynamics without actually going deeper in them. And I don't think the point of the book was for her to go deeper. I think the point of the book was to build a foundation, but it's hard to build that foundation if you don't really understand what she's talking about. So I think I was a little confused on like, again, like who is this book for? Is it for someone who doesn't know anything about mental health, or is it for someone who needs to know a little bit about mental health? I couldn't tell. Um, The other thing I didn't love, so again, a lot of things that like I liked, I also didn't like. So while I love the idea of building awareness, and I do believe that that is a huge first step, a good foundational step, something that it's like something tangible that people can work on. That was pretty much the only tool I got from this whole book. If you're have de a depressive mood, build awareness. If you're experiencing anxiety, build awareness. If you are fighting with your partner, build awareness. And while I agree with those things, when I mentioned, oh, it's like a whole toolbox and we're getting all these different tools, what do we do after the awareness? There was a few examples of like some different journaling prompts or kind of some different reflective things. But that was kind of it. I didn't really get anything deeper than here's knowledge and now be aware of it. Um, which again is good, but the book made it seem like it was going to promise a lot more. If you were just saying, hey, I want to build awareness on these things, I'm going to help you build awareness, I think I would have been a little less critical. So I don't know. I also think she oversimplified choice, which I think a lot of self-help books do, and this is probably why I'm super critical, is I'm trying to look at like the whole puzzle piece and like the whole big picture of all these different factors going on. Like it's not as simple as I'm just gonna work out 5 days in a row, or I don't want to be depressed, so I'm gonna choose to not be depressed. Like I get that we do have some choice, and those choices of behavior do impact our thoughts and our feelings, but it's not always easy or simple. Like, there's often legitimate barriers in the way, whether it's we don't really know how, whether it brings up uncomfortable feelings during change, whether we don't have the time to do some of these things, whether it's finances, whether it's a million other barriers. Like, it's not as simple as just do it, which is literally a quote that she says in here. I think I'm jumping ahead on my notes, but that's literally like when she talks about physical health and having no motivation. She's like, literally, it's a full sentence. Just do it. Imagine a therapist telling you to just do it. If a therapist told me to just do something, In most situations, I would end that session and not call them back for another session. Like, just do it. Okay, if I knew how to do it, I wouldn't need this book. Like, what? Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. There was another area where like she seemed really out of touch in her examples, and I like this one so much I took the exact words. So let me know if I'm being harsh or if this is really out of touch. So she says, for example, a new parent is likely to have no control over the sleep deprivation they face, but they can take extra care to eat well and keep up with social contact with their friends and family. At first glance, that doesn't seem like a harmful statement, right? Like it does validate that they don't have control over some of the sleep stress that they have, but it's also putting like extra pressure for them to now like, well, you should be eating well and like talking to people. I work with a lot of new moms, and let me tell you, the last thing that they are thinking about is meal prepping for themselves when they are taking care of a literal newborn and sometimes even other children in the home, that they're eating, sometimes they don't forget to eat, but they're eating whatever is convenient. And they're not always like, oh, did I have a protein today? Did I have a vegetable? Like, no. They are tired, they are overworked, they're doing everything to stay afloat. Also, the fact that it's now they are supposed to keep up with friends and family. Again, as a therapist, I know that the research shows that the more that we feel supported and using our community, like the health benefits and the mental health benefits that has. But when you are running on like an hour of sleep, you're not going to want to be like, hey, to a friend, do you want to come over and chit chat? No, because you're going to feel obligated to like give into that relationship too. You might be too tired. Your friends might be expecting other things. And it's just easier to be like, I don't want to socialize with anybody. So again, like I can understand the benefits that she's pulling from, but not really taking into account the full picture. And like, I know some good friends where it's like, if you just had a baby, I know those people who are going to show up, be like, you go take care of yourself. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to cook you dinner? Do you want me to do your dishes? Do you want me to throw some laundry in? And like, they're not expecting anything in return. If those are the type of friendships you have, then yes, keep up with them. A lot of friends aren't like that though, right? Like we want things to be back to normal. Like, hey, like tell me about things. Oh, here's what's going on in my life. Listen to me. And people don't always have the capacity for that. So I think it's just kind of out of touch with what the reality is for a lot of folks. Um, Also, like some things are just wrong. Like she claimed to be this evidence-based stuff in this book, but then also saying things that aren't so like incorrect, but just like I think incorrect actually. So she was saying that there's no one's really talking about the link between physical health and mental health. And I'm like, what circles are you in? Like, I learned about that in grad school. I knew about that even before I went to school. Like, I grew up with, oh, hey, we gotta, move our body for 30 minutes a day. That was when I was a kid and I had more energy, so I could do that. Now I'm like, I'm gonna go for a walk. But still, I'm like, we know these things. We know the importance of sleep. We know the importance of water. We know these things are intertwined. There's other barriers in the way that make it difficult to do all the things. And so it's not as simple as just like, well, we know moving our body makes us feel good and it, can be a natural antidepressant in doing those things. I know those things. I have a lot of clients who know those things. And this book doesn't address, well, what are the barriers for that? Maybe it's our motivation. Maybe it's our not wanting to feel sore. Maybe it's other things come up. Maybe it's we get distracted. Like there's a million other things that we can attend to that just seem a little out of it. And I already mentioned that the just do it quote, I think it just serves of just do it. Oh, you want to work out? Just do it. You want to eat healthy? Just do it. Okay, what if I live in a food desert? What if I don't have time because I'm working 80 hours a week and trying to raise four kids? Or what if I am living paycheck to paycheck and I don't have time or energy to be able to meal prep the healthy foods that are supposed to make me feel good? Or I there's just like a million things that it's like in theory, yes, there's research that shows these things. I'm not arguing with that. But then the application to the real world is very different. So, food for thought. And lastly, the thing I didn't love, and I get that it's a point of this book, but it just seemed almost a little too scattered, where it's like, we're going to talk about depression here, we're going to talk about grief over here, we're going to talk about anxiety, we're going to talk about relationships, we're going to talk about attachment, and then also like how to support someone else. And again, like, it doesn't actually give any tangible tools in any of those things. It's like, just be aware, just ask, just, okay. It's like 300 pages. I don't know how many pages it is. I'll tell you. Okay, it's about 300 pages. I want more than just be aware or ask a question. Especially when you're promising me all these different tools. And maybe if you weren't jumping around so much with like trying to fit all these different topics in, then maybe we could actually like just focus on, okay, mood stuff, depression, anxiety, maybe anger and irritability. And then how do we go beyond awareness and asking a question? Like, give me something. Okay. That's my summary of what I liked and didn't like. If you like this book, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you didn't like this book, you are in good company. Um, I actually still would recommend this book for someone. So even though I just spent the last who knows how long this recording is, kind of crapping on it because it doesn't really give me anything new, it doesn't give my clients anything new. Honestly, as I was writing this, I thought I was going to say nobody. I would recommend this book to nobody, and then it got me. Parents of millennials. So like that generation, if they like to read self-help books or if they've like they like their kid like you're in therapy and like talking about therapy and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like and not fully crapping on you going to therapy. This honestly might not be a bad book for them. Because I was thinking about anyone younger than that, honestly, already knows this stuff. We either see it on TikTok, we incorporate it into our workshops, our kids are learning about it, we've been doing our own therapy, or like we know a lot of the basics. We know the basics. Who doesn't know the basics and who maybe isn't as involved in like social media are the parents of millennials, right? And so I think, like, I was thinking of like my mother-in-law who maybe didn't grow up in a super emotionally sound house and doesn't like know some of these things. This would maybe be really great. Or like a grandparent, or there's like a few other people in my family where I'm like, yeah, like that generation, I think could be really helpful because they grew up in a time when mental health was more stigmatized. It was more blamey. It was more of like just a taboo thing to talk about. And so I think that generation actually could help this because it was written in 2022. So I was like, if this was written maybe like 10 to 20 years ago, then maybe I think it would be more helpful for folks. But honestly, all these things that she talks about can be found on like reputable, like mental health TikTok people, YouTube videos, blogs, and other books. But the older generations don't really use those methods as much. So that is honestly who I'd give that book for. So I'm glad I stuck through this format because at first I was like, I wouldn't give this book to anyone. And I was like, aha, there are a few people I would give this to. So if you've watched the whole thing, thank you so much. If you have a book that you would like me to review or that you've heard of before, let me know and I would love any recommendations. If you've read this book, I'd also love to hear your thoughts and I'm open to feedback as well. You don't have to agree with me. Otherwise, I hope you take care of yourself, keep reading, and I will see you next time.